Okay, so today we're going to talk about when to use the subjunctive. We've been talking a lot about the forms and how to conjugate it and everything else. And today we're finally going to start talking about when to use it. So I'm going to put usage over here. This is going to be the first in several videos of when to use the subjunctive. These are known as nominal clauses. Okay, and I'm going to need you guys to kind of think back to grade school and your grade school grammar classes for this. Okay, now let me ask you a question. Which of the following is correct? I was on vacation, or I were on vacation? So which of those two is not correct? Obviously, we all know I was on vacation is the correct one. But now, suppose I change the sentence and I put this phrase at the beginning and I said, I wish I was on vacation, and I wish I were on vacation. Sentences like these are actually going to come up quite often on the SATs in terms of sentence correction, and that's where Spanish can help you out in another area. So it's important to pay attention to this. So which of these is correct? Well, if you guessed this one, you're wrong. It's this one. Because this phrase here, the I wish, this clause here, this main clause, changes the was to a were. Obviously, this wouldn't work over here in the independent clause. It wouldn't work there. But it does work here, because this I wish is known as the main clause, or the principal clause, if you guys can remember that from grade school. This is known as the dependent clause. And this is an example of when we have the subjunctive in English. This is called the dependent clause because it depends whether or not we put this verb in the subjunctive depends on what it says in the main clause here. So, how do you know when what it says in the main clause will influence what it says here? Well, I'll tell you. It's actually very simple. What we want to look for is what I call weirdo. Some teachers will also call this wedding. You use that as an acronym. So essentially, that first clause, that main clause, has to be one of these weirdos. Okay? So, let's look at the W. It has to be either a wish, desire, or imperative, aka like a command, if you were commanding someone to do something. So, I want that you take out the garbage, or I need him to do this for me, or I mandate that you get this done. The E is for emotion. So like the example shows here, where it says, I get or became happy or sad or it makes me angry that, etc. Impersonal observations, and you'll get to know a lot of these phrases. In fact, a lot of them are in your vocab this chapter, such as bueno que, es importante que, es posible que, etc. Recommendations, recomiendo que, sugiero que, etc. Doubt, dudo que, no creo que, crees que, niego que, etc. And ojalá. Ojalá que is a very common phrase in Spanish. It literally means like let's hope to God that, or God willing that. It's another way of saying I hope that. Okay? Now, in order for a sentence to be in the subjunctive, it needs to follow this three-part formula. Number one, the main clause has to be one of those weirdo situations. It has to fall under that. Okay? Then you'll have a K, and then you'll have a second subject. So in order to be subjunctive, oops, sorry about that. It's my messy handwriting on the stylus. So in order to be subjunctive, it has to satisfy subjunctive. Let me erase that. It has to satisfy all three of these requirements. It has to be one of the weirdos in the main clause, in that principal clause there. Then you have to add a K, the conjunction K, to put the sentence together. And then, almost most important of all, there has to be a second subject in the dependent clause. There has to be another person there. So let's give you an example. Okay? So let's use a weirdo phrase, and let's say es importante. That's a weirdo phrase. That's one of the impersonal ones. It's important that, there's our conjunction K. And now in the second sentence, we're going to say es importante que tú, different subject, hagas, I'm going to put this verb in the subjunctive, ejercicio. I'll abbreviate it there. So it is important that you do exercise. Es importante. Here's a weirdo phrase, one of the impersonal expressions. Que tú hagas ejercicio. Will you necessarily exercise? I don't know. That's what makes it subjunctive. So it satisfies all three requirements. The main clause here is a weirdo situation. We have the conjunction K, and then we have the second subject. This counts as the subject, and the subject is that it's impersonal, it's implied. It's the implied third person singular. This is our second subject here. Tú hagas ejercicio. And to give you a different example, I'll show you. Say I said, es importante. Well, let's do a different one. Thought I paused it there. Guess I didn't. Okay. So let's do, let's take dudo que. Yo dudo. Here's the conjunction que. Alright, so far we have a weirdo phrase. We use the conjunction que. And then I'm going to say, dudo que puedo pasar el examen. Oops, don't need an accent there. Okay? So, dudo que puedo pasar el examen. Yo dudo, I doubt that I can pass the exam. How many subjects are there? There's only one. There's only one subject. So, because it didn't meet the third requirement, this verb here is not in the subjunctive. However, if I were to change that, and I said, yo dudo que tú puedas pasar. Now it's in the subjunctive because now I satisfied all three requirements and there are two subjects. Here's subject number 1, yo, and subject number 2. Okay? And that pretty much sums up nominal clauses in the subjunctive. I will obviously go over this much more in depth in class, and I will see you then.